I never thought I'd be the kind of person to prove someone wrong out of spite. But when that someone is your older brother, the guy you grew up idolizing, it hits different. Growing up, I was always Ethan, the screw-up, while my brother Ryan was the golden child. Ryan was 3 years older, tall, confident, and always had that natural charm people just gravitated toward. I, on the other hand, was the quiet one, the one who always had potential but somehow never lived up to it. Our parents owned a small construction company in Ohio. Nothing huge, but enough to pay the bills and keep the family comfortable. Ryan started helping Dad as soon as he turned 16. He was a natural leader, good with numbers, and he had that business mindset from day one. Everyone assumed he'd take over someday. Me? I was more interested in design and tech. I loved tinkering with things, building websites, learning coding. I wasn't great at talking to people, but I was obsessed with creating something of my own. Still, in our house, tech stuff was seen as a waste of time. Dad used to say, "You can't build a house on a computer, son." Ryan would laugh. "Yeah, Ethan, maybe one day you can make an app that carries my lunch." It was supposed to be a joke, but when you hear that kind of thing for years, it starts to stick. After college, Ryan joined Dad full-time while I tried freelancing in web design. Money was tight. Some months I'd make barely enough to cover rent. Other months, nothing at all. I started to believe maybe Ryan was right. Maybe I wasn't built for success. Then, one Thanksgiving, everything boiled over. Our parents invited the whole family, cousins, aunts, everyone. The kind of gathering where people brag about promotions, new cars, and engagement rings. Ryan had recently taken over more responsibilities at the company, and he wouldn't shut up about it. He kept saying things like, "Business is booming, and we're thinking of expanding next year." Everyone was proud of him. I just sat quietly, pushing mashed potatoes around my plate. Then Aunt Marie asked me, "So, Ethan, what do you do these days?" Before I could answer, Ryan chuckled. "He's still trying to figure that out, Aunt Marie." "He's doing, what, websites or something?" I forced a smile. "Yeah, I do web development." Ryan smirked. "Oh, right, that's what it's called. I mean, I just don't get it. How's that even a real job? Do people actually pay for that stuff?" The whole table laughed. Even Dad cracked a smile. I felt my face burn. I muttered, "Yeah, they do." "You'd be surprised," Ryan leaned back. "Well, when you make your first million, let me know. Until then, maybe you should come work for me. I could use someone to handle social media." He said it like he was offering me charity. That was the moment something inside me snapped. After dinner, I went outside to get some air. It was snowing lightly, and the driveway was covered in frost. Ryan came out after a few minutes, still holding a beer. "Hey," he said, "don't take it so seriously, man." "I'm just joking." "Yeah, sure," I replied. "It's always a joke with you." He took a sip. "Look, Ethan, you're smart, but not everyone's meant to be an entrepreneur. That's okay. You just need some direction. I could really help you if you just—" "Work for you?" I interrupted. He shrugged. "Yeah. I mean, why not? You'd learn a lot." I looked at him and said quietly, "You'll regret talking to me like that someday." He smirked. "I doubt that." That night I went home and couldn't sleep. His words echoed in my head. "You're not meant to be successful." I realized that if I wanted to prove him wrong, I'd have to change everything. I started with a plan. First, I stopped freelancing for random clients. Instead, I decided to build something scalable, a software product. I didn't have much money, but I had time and grit. I spent nights learning everything I could about startups, SaaS, and marketing. I lived off instant noodles and black coffee for months. I barely talked to anyone. My idea was simple: a project management tool for small construction businesses. Ironically, I built it thinking about Dad and Ryan's company. They were still using spreadsheets and paper contracts. My goal was to create something that could help businesses like theirs manage projects, invoices, and workers digitally. I called it Build Wise. At first, it was terrible, buggy, ugly, slow, but it worked. I launched a beta version on Reddit and in a few Facebook groups. Within a week, 40 people signed up, then 100, then 500. It wasn't life-changing money, but it was momentum. I was finally building something real. One night, around 2 a.m., I got an email notification. New subscription, $199. Someone had just bought the yearly plan. I stared at the screen, shaking. That was the moment I knew. It was possible. Over the next few months, I reinvested every dollar. I built better servers, hired a freelance designer, and spent hours talking to customers. I'd wake up at 6 a.m., work until 2 a.m., sleep for a few hours, and do it again. My apartment looked like a war zone. Pizza boxes, sticky notes everywhere, 2 monitors glowing in the dark. Meanwhile, Ryan was thriving. His company had expanded, but I heard through mutual friends that they were struggling with managing projects efficiently. Workers complained about confusion, late payments, and lost paperwork. The irony didn't escape me. Then, about 6 months after that Thanksgiving, I got a LinkedIn message. It was from Ryan's operations manager. "Hey, Ethan, I came across your software BuildWise. We're looking for a better way to manage our workflows. Would you be open to a demo?" My heart stopped. I scheduled a demo the next day. I didn't mention who I was related to, just introduced myself as the founder. I gave the presentation like my life depended on it, and at the end she said, "I think this could really help us. I'll bring it up with Ryan." That night, I couldn't stop smiling. Things were about to get interesting. The next week, I woke up to an email from Ryan himself. "Hey, Ethan, didn't know this was your software." Small world, huh? The team liked it. Maybe we can discuss pricing. For a moment, I just stared at the screen, stunned. It was the first time he'd acknowledged what I was doing. Not as a joke, but as something real. I replied, keeping it professional. "Glad to hear that. I can schedule a call to discuss details whenever you're ready." He replied within minutes. "Sure, let's do Friday at 10. That Friday, I joined the video call. Ryan was there, sitting in a polished office, his name behind him on a glass wall. RJ, Construction's CEO. He smiled like nothing had ever happened. "Hey, little brother," he said casually. "Guess you finally made something useful." I forced a polite grin. "Guess so." He leaned back in his chair. "So, tell me, how does this thing work?" "Looks decent." I walked him through the software. Project dashboards, automated invoicing, digital contracts, worker tracking. He nodded a few times, pretending to be impressed. Then came the kicker. "So, what's your rate for a company like ours?" he asked. I had already decided on my pricing tiers. Small companies paid $99 a month. Larger ones, $499. His company fit the larger tier. So I said, $499 a month. Ryan chuckled. "You serious? For a few buttons and charts?" "Actually," I said calmly, "for a system that'll save your company hundreds of hours a year." He tilted his head. "Still sounds steep. How about $100, just 'cause we're family?" I smiled. "Business is business, Ryan." He laughed, but there was something behind his eyes. Annoyance, maybe. "All right, big shot. Let me think about it." The call ended, and I didn't hear from him for weeks. I figured that was it. But then, something unexpected happened. A month later, I started getting sign-ups from local construction companies. 3 of them located in the same area as Ryan's. One of them even emailed me, saying, "We heard about your app through RJ Constructions. They said it's solid." I blinked. Ryan did recommend me. Maybe he'd changed. Maybe he actually respected me now. But before I could overthink it, BuildWise took off like a rocket. Word spread fast through the construction world. Small companies were desperate for something modern and simple. Within 6 months, I went from 500 users to over 8,000. Revenue jumped from a few $100s a month to over $60,000. I hired a small team, a developer in Texas, a marketing girl from Chicago, and a customer support guy from the Philippines. We worked remotely, barely sleeping, chasing the momentum. By the end of that year, BuildWise had become one of the top-rated apps for small contractors on several industry forums. Tech blogs started writing about us. Even LinkedIn featured one of my posts about digitizing the construction field. It was surreal. Meanwhile, I hadn't talked to Ryan in months, until one day I got a call from my mom. "Ethan, honey, your brother's company is having some trouble," she said. My heart skipped. "What kind of trouble?" "Well, they lost a few big clients." Some delays, lawsuits, I don't really know. You boys should talk. Maybe you could help. The same brother who laughed at me at Thanksgiving? Still, I felt a strange mix of guilt and curiosity. So, I called him. He picked up on the third ring. Ethan? Yeah, hey, Mom said you've been having a rough patch. He sighed. Yeah, it's been brutal. 2 clients pulled out, materials cost went up, and my project manager quit. I can't keep up. I'm sorry, man. That sucks. There was a pause. Then he said, almost hesitantly, You know, your software's been the only thing keeping us organized. I should have taken you more seriously. I didn't know what to say. That was the first time Ryan had ever admitted being wrong, even slightly. Over the next few weeks, I helped him out, not as his employee, but as a consultant. We had long calls about automating tasks, handling clients better, using digital tools to streamline operations. I could tell he respected me more now, but there was still that old arrogance lingering beneath the surface. At one point he joked, Man, maybe I should have hired you after all. I laughed. Too late for that. He grinned. Guess so. For a brief moment, it felt like we were brothers again, not rivals. But then things shifted. BuildWise started attracting investors. 2 venture firms reached out, offering seed funding. I was hesitant at first, but after a few negotiations, I secured $1.2 million in funding to scale operations. That changed everything. We rebranded, hired a PR team, launched ads, and within 4 months, our user base doubled again. Construction companies from across the country, even Canada, were signing up. My inbox was a flood of partnership offers. I upgraded from my tiny apartment to a small office downtown. For the first time in my life, I felt like I'd made it. Then came the day I got an email with the subject line, Potential Acquisition, RJ Constructions. At first I thought it was spam, but when I opened it, I froze. Ryan's company was up for sale. Apparently, due to several failed projects and unpaid debts, Ryan had been forced to list his company. He'd overextended, too many expansions, too many loans, too much pride. The market downturn had hit hard, and now he was drowning. Out of curiosity, I contacted the broker handling the sale. We had a polite conversation, and I asked, "What's the asking price?" He said, "They're looking at around $3.1 million, but given the financial situation, we'd consider lower offers." I sat back in my chair, staring at the wall. My brother's company, the one he built, the one that defined his entire identity, was collapsing. And the irony? My software was being used by almost all his competitors. I didn't make a decision that day. I couldn't. It felt wrong. Too personal. But that night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about that snowy Thanksgiving, about the laughter, the smirk, the words, "You'll never be successful." And I realized, this wasn't revenge. It was closure. A week later, I called my investor friend, Mark. He was a sharp guy who loved deals with good stories behind them. "Mark," I said, "how would you feel about acquiring a mid-sized construction company?" He chuckled. "That's random." "Why?" I explained the situation, my brother, the company, the irony. By the end, Mark was silent for a few seconds, then said, "That's poetic. I'm in." Within 2 months, we negotiated quietly with the broker. I made a formal offer, $1.9 million, cash. It was accepted. On a rainy Tuesday morning, the deal went through. I officially became the owner of RJ Constructions. The next day, I drove to their office. The place looked worn out, faded logo, cracked parking lot, half empty. Most of the employees didn't even know the company had been sold yet. Ryan was there, in his office, surrounded by boxes. He looked up as I walked in. "Ethan?" His voice cracked. "Hey," I said softly. "What are you doing here?" I hesitated, then said, "I think you already know." He blinked, processing it. Then his eyes widened. No way, you didn't." I nodded. "Yeah, I bought it." For a moment, he just stared at me, speechless. Then he let out a bitter laugh. "Of course you did," he said quietly. "Of course." He sat down, rubbing his face. "So what now?" "You gonna fire me?" I shook my head. "No, Ryan. I'm not here to humiliate you. I'm here to fix what's broken. It's been a year since that day in Ryan's office, the day everything came full circle. Owning his company wasn't the victory I expected. There was no parade, no cinematic revenge moment, just paperwork, stress, and a lot of broken pieces to pick up. But for the first time, Ryan and I were working together, not against each other. When I took over RJ Constructions, the company was bleeding money. Projects were half finished, employees were frustrated, and morale was at rock bottom. I could have easily fired everyone and replaced the whole team, but I didn't. These people had built something once. They just needed direction. Ryan, surprisingly, stayed on. I made him director of operations. He looked shocked when I offered, saying, "You really want me here?" I nodded. "No one knows this business better than you. You just need to let me handle the systems and trust the process." He hesitated, then agreed. And for the first time, he listened. The first few months were chaos. We integrated BuildWise across all departments. The old school guys hated it. "Why do we need this fancy computer crap?" they'd say. But soon, they realized it worked. Fewer mistakes, faster scheduling, better client communication. Within 3 months, productivity jumped 40%. Ryan started showing up early again, sleeves rolled up, out on job sites. He wasn't barking orders anymore. He was humble, focused. It was strange, but good. I remember one morning, I came into the office and saw him helping one of the younger guys fix a broken printer. He looked up and grinned. "Guess I'm not the big boss anymore, huh?" I laughed. "No, now you're part of something bigger." Slowly things turned around. We landed new contracts, improved reputation, and started making profit again. Clients began noticing how efficient and transparent we'd become. About 6 months later, a journalist from a business magazine reached out to do a story titled, "Brothers Turn Rivalry into a Multi-Million-Dollar Partnership." The article blew up online. People loved the redemption arc, the idea that two brothers who once couldn't stand each other had built something great together. We got thousands of emails after that, from entrepreneurs, small business owners, even families saying the story inspired them. It felt surreal. But the moment that really got me happened one quiet evening in the office. Ryan walked in after everyone had gone home. He had 2 beers in hand. "Thought you could use one," he said. We sat in silence for a while, watching the sunset through the dusty blinds. "You know," he said, "I used to think success was about being the one on top, the boss, the guy everyone listened to." He paused, staring at the floor. "But after losing everything and working with you again, I realized it's not about being the one in charge. It's about being the one who builds." I smiled. "That's what I've been trying to tell you since we were kids." He chuckled. "Yeah, guess I needed to learn the hard way." After that night, our relationship changed completely. We started having dinner every Sunday with our parents again. Dad would always say, "You two finally stopped trying to kill each other," and Mom would tear up. Ryan apologized to me one evening after dinner, not with words, but with something better. He handed me an old photo. It was from when we were kids, both of us building a treehouse in the backyard. On the back, he'd written, "We've always been building something. I just forgot that for a while." I kept that photo on my desk ever since. By the end of that year, RJ Constructions had fully merged with BuildWise under a new name, Wise Build Group. Ryan and I co-owned it, 50-50. We had over 60 employees, clients in 12 states, and we're on track to make $12 million in annual revenue. But numbers didn't matter as much anymore. What mattered was what we'd built: trust, respect, and a story we'd never forget. The last conversation that really stuck with me happened just before Christmas. We were walking out of the office after a long day, snow falling again, just like that night years ago when he told me I'd never be successful. He looked at me and said, "You remember that night I told you you'd never make it?" I nodded. "Yeah, hard to forget." He smirked. "Well, turns out I was right." I frowned. "What?" He laughed. "You didn't just make it, Ethan. You went way beyond what I thought was possible. You built something out of nothing, and somehow pulled me along with you." I grinned. "Guess you finally made something useful too." He shoved my shoulder, laughing. Screw you. We stood there, snow falling quietly around us, the office lights glowing behind the glass. For the first time in my life, I felt peace. If you'd told me a few years ago that I'd end up buying my brother's company, I would have laughed in your face. But life has a funny way of teaching lessons, not just to the people who doubt you, but to the people you become in the process. I didn't buy his company to destroy him. I bought it to save both of us from who we used to be. Because sometimes, success isn't about proving someone wrong. It's about proving to yourself that you can rise without hating the ones who held you back. And that's the story of how my brother told me I'd never be successful, and how, a year later, I bought his company and gave him a job.